Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome to this lunchtime webinar. My name is John Young, and remind myself who I am. I'm a principal trainer at TSG Training, so I'm one of the people who delivers this course amongst other courses. And what I plan to do over this lunchtime session is give you an overview to the ISTQB Advanced Security Tester course. So I've got an agenda. So what we're going to talk about, or what I'm going to talk about to you, is about security threats and costs. I'll talk about different ways in which security testing is different from other testing or normal functional testing. So we give some background on security, and then I'll talk about the course in more specific detail, who the course is aimed at, and what the business outcomes aligned to the syllabus are intending to do. And I'll also talk you through the content, what we cover across the course, and I'll explain the exam format. And then, having talked about the course in general, or rather in the course in specifics, I'm then going to just go back to security in general and give some tips, some good practices that are hopefully going to give you, if you worry about these things, some ideas, things you can do to give yourself some more confidence in being aware and more careful in the way you look at your digital assets. So I'm going to start by just talking about some general security threats. I think about security is, when we're looking after our assets, the attacks. How can people get access to your assets? Who could get access to your assets? Well, one of the things that makes security such a challenge is that when you're looking after your assets, you've never got the initiative. Attacks could come from anywhere. So I've got a listing here. Where do attacks come from? Well, you've got attacks could come from rival organizations. They could come from your partners. One of the things from the outside world, curious hackers. We've got the worry of things like cyber warfare. Now, organized crime is in organized crime's involvement with cybersecurity has significantly grown over the last the last 10 years, definitely. But also we've got people who are interested because they have a difference of opinion with your organization, direct to society in general, and then disgruntled employees, disgruntled organization members. So when we're trying to defend a system, it isn't just from outside. It isn't just from adversaries. It could be the attacks we're protecting are from inside organization or from alongside organization. So that's one of the things we have to bear in mind is there's a term often used in security, which is your attack surface, the different things you have to protect and defend from. And we've got to be ready to look in virtually any direction when we're thinking about where could a breach come from, where could an attack come from. And also, you've got to think about why would the attack take place in the first place? What are the motivations? So again, look at these threat sources. Then some of the motivations for attacks. For example, if you're talking about rival organizations, they may be interested in getting what you've got. If you look, just look at the news stories, the number of prosecutions of people who've been paid to collect information for other people, spying, espionage, there's state espionage, there's also corporate sponsored espionage. They've also, some organizations are just interested in paying other people, maybe to disrupt a competitor's business, to affect their market position or customer confidence. So rivals may be one of our threat sources. But when we work alongside people, there's always the danger that our partners may unintentionally facilitate an attack. When we're working with trusted partners, we can't always be sure that the people we work with are as diligent in the protections of the access to your information. And then we've got the outside world, the curious hackers. People are always interested in finding out what they can do. Why did you climb the mountain? Because it was there. Why did we break into a system? Because it was there. Because they said they were secure, so we wanted to see if we could get in. And inside the hacking community, you get kudos, you get recognition from your exploits. So some people are just curious to know what's behind the door. Some people are just interested in finding out if there are any secrets to show to the people. Recognition that they know things that other people don't know. And so not all attackers are malicious. Not all attackers are out there to cause harm and damage overtly. But in doing what they do, they may find things out you don't want them to find out. They may cause damage and harm to be able to facilitate their attacks. And then on the more malicious side of things, we've also got then state agents, state actors, people who are working on behalf of nation states or large organizations who maybe are interested in disrupting, acquiring secrets, but maybe just disrupting operations of rival organizations, rival infrastructure. And I mentioned organized crime. So it could be, again, it may be a rival organization pays organized crime to do disruption or to collect information, but also significantly more in looking at the justifications behind attacks and the net benefits of attacks, financial gain, extortion, theft. That's a big driver. And also we've got political and ethical drivers. So activist organizations may be looking at, they're not interested in, sometimes they're interested in stealing information, but they may be just interested in causing trouble, disruption, getting publicity. And when we're looking at things like curious hackers, cyber warfare, organized crime, activists, we're talking about the external threats. But sometimes disgruntled employees, people who feel that they have a disagreement with what you're doing, or they feel that they've not been well represented or well recompensed, or just unhappy. And revenge is often one of the most dangerous motivators for people, because that's when people may be interested in doing harm. So attacks can come from many different directions. The motivations behind attackers are many and disparate. And the cost of a security breach for a large organization or a state or a government agency could easily be in excess of $1 billion. When you look at all the things that have to happen if you get a security breach, there's the obvious things. Losing revenue, being fined or being penalized by regulatory agencies. But there's the theft of your assets. If it's a ransomware attack, then due to extortion, it could be the fees, the ransom fees you're paying. If it's secrets information, the loss of your intellectual property. If it's a loss of an asset, then having to rebuild it, reconstruct it. The confidence in your brand, and maybe the loss of revenue and customer base. The cost of the analytics, the digital forensics. I'm putting things right. And maybe if your brand is affected, maybe your share price, your stock valuation could be affected as well. Our IBM published statistics on security breaches, and the average cost of a data breach worldwide over the last 3 surveys, so 2020, 2021, 2022, it's been going up. So just over $100,000 per breach on average this year compared to last year, or full financial years. But IBM have also said that's the global cost. In the United States, it's about twice that. The average cost of a data breach is around $9 million. And if it's in some market sectors, in things like the medical insurance business in the United States, it's over $10 million on average a breach. So can you afford not to look at security, I suppose, is the argument, when you look at the cost if it goes wrong? Also, on average, the time it takes to identify you've had a breach and then put it right and resolve the problem, on average, 277 days. So it can take some time for you to know you've actually had a problem, then to put it right. The cost in time and money can be significant. And that's a lot of the drivers for organizations being interested in enhancing their security testing capabilities. And if you talk to people about testing in general and talk about security testing, then sometimes it's quite difficult for people to pinpoint where do we put security testing? Is it in the non-functional testing arena? Is it in the functional testing arena? In the course I teach for ISTQB, then we're going to primarily look at security testing as a functional testing activity, but it's different to traditional standard testing. If you were testing the functionality of a system using standard test techniques, then the kind of test input data you'd select would come from specifications. It would come from positive testing, so information from requirements and processes. And when we start looking at security testing, if we only look at tests based on requirements and processes, then we might miss some security issues, because we've got to start looking at other justifications, other reasons why we test. We'll need to do negative testing to check the system doesn't do what it shouldn't do, and users cannot do the things they're allowed to do, to a greater degree of rigor and creative thinking than if you purely looked at, for example, our traditional black box test design techniques. And another thing we have to take into consideration when we're doing security testing is that the reason why you get security vulnerabilities isn't just about requirements and process being applied. It's about technology being applied, and technology changes, and what's an effective piece of system innovation 1 year becomes a backdoor. It becomes an idea, an exploit then attackers could use often for reasons that the original formulator of the technology never envisioned. So the kind of technical indicators, the symptoms of security defectors are often of a more technical nature. So if we just concentrate on user inputs, user outputs, user interface-based behavior, we wouldn't necessarily identify all the signals that would tell us that there are potential vulnerabilities that could be exploited. So we can use, and we do use, a lot of the techniques we use in standard functional testing, but in security testing, we have to look at other perspectives and angles as well. One of the things we need to consider is, are we vulnerable to threats? And one of the things that we'll focus on in security testing is looking to check that security policies are in place. So that's one thing that's different from functional testing. Normally, we're going to focus on what the security policies say. We're going to then also not just adhere to them, but see if we can compromise them. So there's a greater emphasis on negative testing. There's a greater emphasis on focusing on positive tests around things like policies and procedures. And we want to check that the defenses, the security mechanisms are in place. They work where they're specified, but then we're going to start looking at ways in which you can circumvent those. And one of our other key sources of these ideas are going to be the attacks, the exploits used by those adversaries, the people who do try to break in from outside. So this is a course where we're going to look at enhancing your perspective of testing from beyond what you do from a standard test analyst functional testing point of view. And the course is aimed and the syllabus and the qualification is aimed at people who have got some experience in security testing. And if I said most people who've done functional testing have got some experience of security testing, if you've ever tested log on, access permissions, the testing of process and procedures, then you've got a start point. So the idea with this course is if someone said to me, what is this course about? I'd say it's a very, very significant, in-depth explanation and introduction to all aspects of security and security testing. So the ISTQB, in setting up the syllabus, defined 15 business outcomes expected of somebody who's gone through the course and achieved the qualification. And I'll just I'm not going to do a massive overview, but 15 outcomes are quite a lot of outcomes. So firstly, the intention is that you'll be able to plan, perform, and evaluate your security tests, but from a lot of different points of view, your security policies, your security risks, standards, your requirements, and commonly known vulnerabilities. To be able to align your security test objects with whatever's going on in your project lifecycle, so that we've got test activities aligned to every stage of the project. And to be able to analyze our risk assessment techniques, particularly for the point of view security threats and security vulnerabilities, and to be able to provide feedback and contribution into our perception of the security levels that relate to the risks. To be able to evaluate our existing security tests, so our test suites, and identify as a result of that whether we consider that we need any additional security tests. To be able to critically look at a set of security policies and procedures, but also look at those with the results of our security testing to give an objective opinion of whether those policies are actually effective in protecting your organization, your digital assets from vulnerabilities. And for specific projects, identify from a test planning point of view what our security test objects are going to, security test objectives are going to be. Align those with the functionality, the technology that we're applying, the vulnerabilities, and also look at any one given situation inside a project to then help formulate which approaches are most likely to succeed in this specific given situation, which is often aligned to a specific threat. And then identify where we may need to add additional approaches, enhance the approach that we currently have. To be able to provide an evaluation of the various defenses that are put into place. So we'll be able to evaluate the effectiveness of the most commonly applied security mechanisms, and to help feed into information security awareness for the entire organization. And I mentioned that when we talk about designing tests from a security perspective, one of the important things both to identify the risks and look at effectiveness of defenses, and to test those defenses, we need to be able to think like the attackers. So you're going to get an awareness of the way attackers think, the actions they will perform, how they may hide the evidence that are there. The reason that it can take on average 277 days to discover and resolve a security breach, because a lot of attackers are very good at hiding where they've been. So understanding how they go about that. And to be able to provide feedback to people by analyzing in mid-project what an interim security test status report would tell us. And in formulating a test approach, analyze and document what our security test needs, particularly if we want to introduce any tools, and to be able to then help select which types of tools we might need for a given situation. And finally, understand the benefits of aligning our testing with security standards and security testing standards, and some awareness of where we can get those standards from. So it's quite a substantial set of business outcomes that the course and syllabus are aiming at. So to deliver those outcomes, the course is a 4-day course, and the course that we're running was written by Randy Rice, and Randall Rice is the chair of the syllabus team. So he was involved in writing this syllabus, and we decided that Randy's insight into what the syllabus covered and Randy's experience in many, many years of formulating and implementing security test approaches, we decided that his course would be the one that we would adopt and run. And the syllabus, and a quick overview, there are 9 chapters. So I'll explain we'll explain the basis of security testing, the risks, the policies, the fact it will feed into auditing. We'll talk about how that fits into setting our overall goals and policies and test processes, and how that can be improved over time. We'll show how and give you insight into how we align the test process along with security testing, so that we've got test activities and security testing activities for every stage of the test process. And we also look at how security testing isn't something you just patch in at the end of a project. It's not something you can just bolt on. If you want a secure system, you need to ideally design, architect, implement, and test it into the product from the very start of the life cycle. So we go through every stage: requirements definition, business needs analysis, design, code implementation, unit testing, integration testing, system testing, acceptance testing, but also maintenance, what we do for the day after the software's gone live. The vulnerabilities continue to grow. So what we do about making sure that upgrades and maintenance patches are implemented into organizations without introducing new vulnerabilities or compromising existing defenses. I mentioned that one of the business outcomes is being able to provide evaluation on security mechanisms. So we will look in detail at hardening, authentication, authorization, encryption, network infrastructure in terms of firewalls, network zones, intrusion detection systems, malware scanning, how we protect data with and test data with obfuscation, and how we enhance security awareness with training. We look at the human factors. Security testing isn't just about processes. It isn't just about technology. It's about, we mentioned security awareness, but understanding how the attackers operate, how we have to keep people's awareness up, how people are using social engineering to get the kind of information the attacker can start to use to produce an exploit. And if we're doing all that testing, we need to keep people aware of what's going on. So how to evaluate and report, and how to do that in a way that doesn't mean that the information, the value information we acquire from security testing isn't itself compromised. And we'll talk about the fact that tools are as essential in security testing as they are in all testing activities. In fact, a lot of the tools used in security testing are the same tools used by attackers. So we'll give you some insights into those tools and how they're used and how they can influence our test approach. And then give you some insight into standards, trends, where you can look to find out more information, and also to keep your skill set up to date, because security is also one of those practices that is very, very dynamic. It's very much an area that is evolving. Now, when we're talking about ISTQB, it's always helpful just to remind you about the exam format. So the exam is similar to all the other ISTQB advanced or secondary exams. It's a scenario-based exam, so you're going to get multiple choice questions, but based on scenarios which could reflect either designs or situations or projects. There are 45 questions. Because it's an advanced exam, the questions are worth between 1 and 3 marks. You need to earn 65% to get the qualification, so 52 out of the 80 available marks. And for For anybody who is not requesting extra time, then the standard duration is 2 hours, 120 minutes. The exam is available as a online proctored exam, or as at the moment we're primarily doing either online proctored exams or giving people access to Pearson VUE exam centres. So that's just a quick oversight into the course. Now, we also promised in the promotion material that we give you some hints and tips. As always with this, it's just aware of time. So just some security tips. I've got half a dozen I'm going to talk you through. So first one, know what you've got that's valuable. Make an inventory of your valuable assets. Don't just look at the digital assets, look at the physical assets as well. Make sure you know where they're located. If they're digital, which stores, which devices, which systems, which databases. If they're physical, which cupboards, which safes. Are they in people's lockers? Are they in desk drawers? How valuable are they to you? How much would it cost you to reproduce them? How valuable they are to an attacker? What could they do with them? Which levels of protection? Not all assets are of equal value. Which are the most precious to you? So make sure you know where your valuable assets are. Don't forget the physical ones need protecting as well. Secondly, make sure you do regular security risk assessments. And this is in addition to standard risk-based approaches, because security risks are different. And make sure that when you're looking at security risks, individual projects may be different to your organization. Your organization may use one technology. You may have a project to use a new one that if you don't look at that project, you'll be using your standard risk assessment. You won't realize that maybe new technologies bring in new vulnerabilities. Threats are going to change over time. Just adding other people's products. So if you work with commercial off-the-shelf or third-party suppliers, by introducing their product into infrastructure, you're introducing new vectors into the system, new routes that people could take and exploit. Vulnerabilities are going to emerge because technology moves on. New technology introduce threats, new attacks introduce new routes into the system. If you're going to set up security test policies, make sure it's not just you or you as a test leader, or as a test manager, or as a department head. You need to get the senior management bought into your security approaches. Have you got a security policy? Make sure it's aligned. Have you got a chief information security officer? If organizations want to take security seriously, they need to fund it. I mentioned these data breach prices are going up all the time, and that's the cost of an average breach. You could get more than one breach in one organization in one financial year. Can you afford not to get the buy-in and the commitment? If you have products that you write yourselves, if you have products that you get from third-party suppliers, make sure, look to see what are the coding standards, the design standards being used. Are they secure? Have they been defined? Have they been kept up to date? If you're working with third parties, have they got a definition and a commitment to applying good standards, secure standards? Have you put them in your contracts? Because if you put them in contracts, you've got something enforceable. Look at testing at every stage of your development lifecycle, from requirements definition through design, through the implementation, through the integration into your environments. When they're being deployed, the configuration, and then the ongoing maintenance. You've got to test continuously, I'm afraid, because the risks change. The opportunity to introduce and compromise security can happen at every layer of a product construction and deployment and maintenance. And don't forget, when you start looking at security, your security test work, your test scripts, your cases, your plans, they're sensitive information. The results you get from the test, sensitive information. Look after it. Keep it secure. Remember, security defects aren't always going to be able to be fixed straight away. The more people who know about tests, the more people who know about implicit vulnerabilities, the more people who know about fixes, the more people who know about things that they can then start to try to compromise again. So keep your test assets secure, keep your test results secure. They themselves are digital assets. So I'm just aware I'm getting up to 30 minutes slot here. So just to summarize up, the course is a 4-day course. It includes theory, exercises. Randy, in writing the course and building scenario-based exercises, they're based on case study information. So we've got a lot of pretty realistic situations we can explain to you. We're going to cover all aspects of the security test process, all aspects and all stages of software development lifecycle. We're covering all the key security mechanisms that need to be put into a system. The qualification is the same format as all other ISTQB qualifications. It's multiple choice, scenario based, same pass mark for all ISTQB qualifications, 65%. There is one other thing I would just remind you, it's for all ISTQB qualifications, as a prerequisite for taking the exam, you must already hold the ISTQB foundation. If you just want to attend the course to get the benefit without the qualification, that's not needed. But certainly you can't take the advanced exam without the foundation. So I'm slightly over on my 30 minutes. So thanks for sticking with me. And just finally, what we'll be sending out to you as a follow-up, we're going to send you a copy of this presentation. The webinar is being recorded, so we'll distribute a recording. If you want to see when we run the course, look at our website. We do run other security courses as well. So if you go where the URLs are mentioned here on the slide, you'll get this with the course pack. We've been extending the portfolio over the last few years. So have a look on the site. There's a lot more things that we run. We're going to run webinars on these subjects. So keep an eye on what we're doing in there, what we're promoting. And has anybody got any questions just before we wrap up? Then if not, I'm going to say thank you very much for attending. Keep an eye out for the email when we send the webinar. We've got a nice surprise in there for you as well. If you want to know anything else, then you can either contact us at inquiries@tsdtraining.co.uk. And I think that's a typo because I think that should be TSD-training. And always come look on our website. So thank you very much for taking time at lunch for you to go through this with me, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you very much.